Welcome to Winning on the Homefront, putting on the customer's eyeglasses. You already know that if you're going to make customer cheerleaders, you need to look at things through the eyes of the homeowner. But now in this section, we're going to put on an even better pair of customer eyeglasses that will let us feel the same feelings our customers have as we work in their home. You'll discover that when homeowners have technicians working in their homes, they feel trapped, vulnerable, and frankly scared to death. You'll learn how to set your client free from these negative emotions and in the process make a customer cheerleader. Of course, you need to not only feel the emotions of the customer, but also you must understand the expectations that your client has for you and the work you'll do in their home. Remember, the only way to make a customer cheerleader is to dramatically exceed the expectations of your client. And it's a lot easier to exceed expectations if you know what they are to start with. So, in this section, Steve will share the 3 essential reasons why it's so important to interview your customer and at the same time develop a relationship with them. Steve will share interviewing tips and hints that will help you become a star in the Homefront stage play. Also, you'll learn about the benefits of following a service system, a script that consistently gives your customer positive moments of truth. These concepts of looking through the eyes of your customer, of feeling their emotions, and finally of learning the expectations of your client are vital to your success on the home front. So let's get started with putting on the customer's eyeglasses.
You'll recall we discussed earlier in this course the concept of putting on the customer's eyeglasses. Learning to always see ourselves through the customer's eyes to build our work around the viewpoint of the customer. But now let's go a little deeper with this concept. In this segment, you're going to put on customer's eyeglasses that not only give you the viewpoint of your customer, they also allow you to feel the emotions of the homeowner. Because if you've learned one thing from this course so far, I hope by now you realize that your customer makes their value decisions about your work emotionally. So logically, we need to tap into the emotions of your customer. Now you're standing in the customer's home, and as you put on the customer's eyeglasses, you find yourself looking out through the customer's eyes, and then you plug in. You plug in to the customer's feelings. You're looking out on a world that looks familiar, but somehow it isn't. It's the same furniture, the room is the same, but everything is skewed. Why? Because now, with the customer's eyeglasses, your viewpoint has changed. For example, that table that your coworker just dragged out of the way, all you can see now is how that one leg, still quivering from the strain, is cocked at a weird angle, and the customer's feelings of apprehension and worry are just washing over you. And now, looking through your customer's eyeglasses, you see your coworker. You really see him for the first time. Now, before you put on the customer's eyeglasses, well, he looked fine, normal, the same as always. After all, you work with him every day. But now just look at him. Coffee stains on a uniform that looks like it's been slept in. And those big black Vibram-soled boots that he's so proud of. Well, look, they still have caked mud on the outside of them. And you're afraid now to look at the bottom. And your coworker's hands. Uh-oh, he's getting ready to move. Not the rocker. You see, that rocker, before you put on the customer's eyeglasses, it just looked like an old piece of garage sale junk. You wouldn't pay $2 for it. But now that you've put on the customer's eyeglasses, you see that this old rocker has a glow to it. From all those years watching your wife cradle your children in it. And now, a young man with black, grease-stained hands is getting ready to touch this prized heirloom. You feel the customer's body swinging into action as he says, Here, let me do that for you. Now, before you put on the customer's eyeglasses, you might have thought, fine with me if he wants to help move the furniture, less work for me. But now that you have the customer's eyeglasses on, you feel the customer's mind fill up with a deep sense of unease, anxiety, and a total lack of confidence in you and your coworker. You realize that the customer was going to leave for work, but now he decides to call the office, tell them he's running behind as he thinks, I'd better watch these guys. Now, let me ask you, are the customer's eyeglasses helping you to understand the alternate reality we deal with every day on the home front? You know, a famous author once said, it's par for the course trying to fool the people, but it's downright dangerous when you start fooling yourself. And I would submit that if you ignore this concept of the customer's eyeglasses, if you refuse to build your attitudes and behavior around the emotions and the feelings and the viewpoint of your customer, then you're fooling yourself. And life is going to be miserable for you as you work in customers' homes. But you see, it doesn't have to be that way. All we have to be doing is constantly asking ourselves, what does the customer want? And I'm here to tell you that if you'll sincerely try to do this with an attitude of care and concern, you're already going to be better and more effective than 98% of the technicians and workers out there on the home front. But you know, let's be better than all of them. Let's go deeper into what the customer wants. And determining what the customer wants, what they really want, is one of the toughest things you'll ever face on the home front. And why is this so hard? Because most of the time, even your customer isn't aware of what they truly want and what they truly need, because these feelings are buried deep in their subconscious. So let's talk about the feelings of your client during your initial contact with them, those first few minutes when you meet the customer in their home. And remember that we're dealing with two things here: customer emotions and customer expectations. The number one emotion that your customer feels, especially when they deal with you for the first time, is a very ugly, very nasty four-letter word. It's called fear. Now, customers, depending upon their personalities, are going to feel this fear to different degrees. And it might come across to your customer as apprehension or nervousness, caution, concern, or just plain old worry. But trust me, everybody that meets you for the first time when you're getting ready to come into their home to work is scared to death. Now, why do customers feel this sense of fear? Well, let's analyze what's different about the home front. Now, we've already talked in this course about the difficulty of judging the value of any service. The customer doesn't know how to determine if you're doing a good job or a bad job. I mean, if the customer knew how to do the work, how to perform the service, he or she wouldn't need us to be there to do it for them. But let's go deeper on this four-letter word fear and the causes behind it. Remember the illustration I used earlier in this course of shopping in the mall? And you go in a retail store, you don't like the mood, you don't care for the service. Something strikes you wrong about the store. You get bad vibes. Well, what options do you have? Well, you can always turn around and leave, or at the very most say to the salesperson, thanks, I'm just looking around, I'll be back later. And then, of course, you never go back. But you didn't have an emotional confrontation there, did you? Well, what if you're at a movie and you don't like it? You just get up and leave. No big ugly deal there. You see, in most buying situations, we can excuse ourselves easily without confrontation. We can make what I call an anonymous withdrawal. We leave easily. We withdraw. Yes, in a store, a restaurant, a movie theater, wherever we are, it's just easy to leave and withdraw anonymously. But what about when you have a service performed in your home? You see, there, you're trapped. And if you don't like the attitudes, if you don't like the actions of the people performing the service, if you just don't like the way things are going, it's too late. All you can really do without a big, ugly scene is hold on and hope for the best. And you see, very few people will make an ugly scene. So make no mistake about it. the main emotion in the customer's universe, at least during the first few minutes when we meet them at their front door, is fear. Now, when we look and we feel more closely through the customer's eyeglasses, we encounter other ugly, negative emotions. We're going to find defensiveness, belligerence, and sometimes even outright hostility. Now, your customers might not show these negative emotions outwardly, but don't worry, they're going to have them. Why is this? Well, think about the service encounters you've had as a customer. What have you ran into? Well, my guess is you've encountered apathy, indifference, buying experiences that were insulting and demeaning. You see, the common viewpoint in America is that you have to demand, you have to fight for good service in this country. And in order to get revved up to fight, you got to get the old adrenaline up. Now, you've heard the phrase, the fight or flight syndrome. Now, what that means is when we face something we fear, we're either going to fight it or we're going to run away. The adrenaline starts pumping in our bodies, our breathing quickens, and if we were a cat, the fur would rise on our back. And when we see something we are afraid of, remember this, we're either going to fight it or we're going to run away. Well, what choices does the homeowner have? We've already learned on the home front, the customer in a very real sense has nowhere to run to. You see, remember that a man's home is his castle, and when we work in it, he feels trapped in this castle. So we need to recognize the emotions of fear, apprehension, vulnerability, and hostility that your customer, all of our customers, are feeling. And then we've got to deal with them. And until we do, our customers are going to continue to have this attitude of defensiveness or suspicion toward us as Homefront workers. So to answer the original question, what does the customer want? Well, it's simple. They want freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from worry, and freedom from having to be defensive in their own castle, their own home. So it's real important that you have the proper attitude here. Don't view these negative customer attitudes in a bad way. It's very, very important that you don't take them personally. In fact, you should really feel sorry for your customer. Don't feel resentment toward them. Remember that your customers, when they first meet you, they're a lot more scared of you than you are of them. And also, remember please that we're dealing with just the first few minutes here when you first meet the customer. They don't know you yet. I'm sure, as all of your friends say, to know you is to love you. And I'm sure that your customer will too. But the key here is for you to be aware of these negative emotions that the customer is feeling when they first meet you. You see, these emotions are very, very real. So don't be defensive yourself, and then tailor your work. Present yourself in such a way to relieve the customer's fear, their anxiety, and their suspicion. Now, in the segments to come, I'm going to be giving you dozens of ideas on how to do this. But they're not going to make any sense to you if you're not willing to put on the customer's eyeglasses. Now, if you'll build your stage play around the customer's viewpoint and emotions, you're going to reap the reward. And how is this? Because you're going to develop many, many customer cheerleaders, and you're going to enjoy all the benefits that come with them. Now, we've analyzed the customer's emotions at the time of their initially meeting you, but we also need to examine their expectations of our service. Now, why is that? Well, you see, anytime we buy something, we have expectations, don't we? What we wish to get from any transaction. Now, when we buy a manufactured good, it's easy to set up our expectations and to know whether those expectations have been realized, have been fulfilled. Why is it? Because remember previously we talked about manufactured goods. We can touch them, we can taste them, we can test them, we can drive them. So we know what to expect, and then it's easy for us to know if our expectations have been met. But you see, customers' expectations of our services are so much more difficult for them to come up with, and then to know if they've been met, especially on the home front. Now, customers have set up in their mind what I call baseline expectations. And baseline expectations are the standards that they've set up that consciously or subconsciously need to be met in the customer's mind just for them to be satisfied, or what I call passively happy. Maybe we could term it an even-Steven transaction. You do the work, they pay the bill. The customer isn't terribly disappointed, but they're also not wildly ecstatic with your work. Now, of course, with our understanding of the home front, we need to do much, much more than just meet baseline expectations of the customer. We need to develop them into cheerleader customers. Now, you might say, well, that's simple. I just need to do a good job. But you see, now the plot thickens. You see, who defines a good job? Well, it's the customer, with all of his emotions and the expectations that he has in his universe. Now, these quality standards, the expectations of the customer, they might be accurate expectations, they may be reasonable and fairly easy for us to meet them. Or these expectations may be wildly distorted and unrealistic. So again, what do? Well, we're going to put on our customer's eyeglasses, because how can we exceed the expectations of the customer if we don't know what they are? So we're going to find out now what these extremely important customer expectations are in a very simple manner. Now, you see, we could conduct market studies and read research reports and interview focus groups, or we can just avoid all this complicated stuff and ask the customer. You see, it's almost too simple. You're going to ask questions of your customer and interview them to discover their expectations. Now, this concept of interviewing and questioning your customer to find out what their expectations are is extremely important. This customer interview has several advantages. First of all, we're able to find out what the customer's baseline expectations are. And remember that the key to any successful business relationship is clearly defined expectations. And this is where the service technician so often goes off the track, because either the customer doesn't want to or isn't able to convey to the technician what they expect, what they want. Sometimes the customer doesn't know himself. And then sometimes, sadly, the technician doesn't ask, doesn't care, and doesn't listen to the customer. So how do we solve this problem? Now, we obviously need to ask questions, but not just any old questions. The first question that you should always ask the customer in this customer interview is, do you have any areas of special concern? Did you get that? That is so important. Do you have any areas of special concern? Now, don't use the word problem here. Never, ever say to a customer, are there any problems I need to know about? You see, that's a negative word, the word problem, and people often think that if they admit they have a problem, well, we're going to charge them more. Now, of course, your customer has a problem. That's why they called you. They want you to fix the problem. But instead, say, tell me about your concerns, or show me any areas of special concern. And this question, I promise you, will you show me any areas of special concern? This question alone will dramatically cut the problems that you have on the home front. Now, as your customer replies in this customer interview, you need to do something important here. And you know what it is? Listen to them. Really listen, not just to their words, but put on your customer's eyeglasses. As you interview your customer, you're going to get important hints of what their expectations are of your work. Now, if these customer expectations are unrealistic, well, you can tactfully readjust them. But the worst thing that can happen to anybody who works in the customer's home is to run blind and not have any idea of what the homeowner's expectations are. Now, sadly, most workers on the home front have as little communication with the homeowner as possible and then just hope they're happy. Well, you talk about living your life in fear. What a rotten way to go. How much better to leave the homeowner knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt you've not only met, you've exceeded the expectations of the customer, and in so doing, you've created a cheerleader. Now, when you interview your customer, you also learn about their experiences with other companies that have worked in their home in the past. Now, with the current sorry state of customer service today, chances are your customers have had some real problems, and they're going to bring this negative baggage to the job with them. Now, remember, the customer's concerns and expectations may have little or nothing to do with what the technical problem is. You're going to be a lot more successful here if you fix the customer first, and then you fix the actual technical problem. Now, so far we've learned that when we interview the customer, first of all, we want to learn what their expectations are, and then second, we want to discover their history, what nightmares they've had with companies that have done the same sort of work in their home in the past. And then we're going to change our performance accordingly. Now, let me share with you a third reason why interviewing the customer is so important. You see, when we ask the customer questions, it forces us to start a conversation with them. And guess what? It forces the customer to communicate and start building a relationship with you. And you already know that 80% of how your customer decides whether you've done a good job or a bad job is based on their relationship with you, the person doing the work in the home. So during this conversation that's masquerading as an interview, your customer is going to come to know you as an individual, and you're going to have a wonderful opportunity here to display an attitude of care and concern. You know, I'll never forget, during my Homefront days, I was interviewing a customer before I started cleaning her carpets. And she mentioned the last time she'd had her carpets cleaned, she'd used one of our competitors, a nationally known carpet cleaning franchise, and she wasn't happy. Now, of course, you already know that you never, ever say anything bad about your competition, so I just commented in a neutral tone, "Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Usually they do a pretty good job." And the client sighed and she said, "You know, the job was okay." But then she blurted out angrily, "I just felt like they didn't care." You see, as a friend of mine says, with the dawn came the light. You see, when I heard my customer state, "I just felt like they didn't care, that's why I didn't call them back," this became a defining moment for me as I worked on the home front. You see, I knew this company, our competition, quite well. You know, their equipment and their technical procedures were every bit as good as our company, and the people that were doing the work, they were nice, decent, honest, hardworking people, and this company was a lot cheaper than the company I was working for. So why did my company do over 75% of all the carpet cleaning in our market area? Because we constantly showed our customers an attitude of care and concern. Now, there's another advantage here. You see, we also build forgiveness when we show an attitude of care and concern. You know, I'm continually amazed at the screw-ups and the boo-boos on our part the customer will forgive if, as we mess up, we're doing so showing an attitude of care and concern. You know, occasionally in my carpet cleaning business, we would encounter a carpet spot that just wouldn't come out, and we tried everything on it. But we learned something. We learned that if the customer wasn't there to observe us working and working and working, well, very likely we were going to receive an indignant customer complaint when they returned home. But now, put on your customer eyeglasses with me and watch this same scene, except now the homeowner is right there watching us working and working and working so hard. And finally, after working so long, you turn to the housewife and you confess, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Jones, we just can't remove this spot from your carpet." Now, you know what would happen? 99% of the time, Mrs. Jones would respond, "Never mind, you did your best. Don't worry about it." Now, think about it. The offending spot was still there. You, in a technical sense, failed. And yet the customer is saying, "It's okay, don't feel bad." You see, by the mere act of the customer observing your hard work and attention to detail, your care and concern, you've turned an almost guaranteed callback into the customer comforting you. There, you did your best. You see, if we display this attitude of care and concern, and the customer knows we are, you're going to create a powerful, positive moment of truth. So let's review why the customer interview is so important on the home front. First of all, questions let you learn what the baseline expectations of the customers are. And if the customer's expectations are unreasonable, you then have a chance to very tactfully modify them. Questions, or the interview, can also give you a window into the customer's emotions and their past experiences with other companies like yours. You're able to find out what their real concerns are, and then you're going to follow the old adage, fix the customer first, and then fix the real problem. And finally, interviewing the customer forces you to develop a relationship, to build a bond with them and them with you. By using questions in the customer interview, you're also able to demonstrate that all-important attitude of care and concern. Now, of course, all the interview questions in the world and all the care and concern won't ever give you a complete picture of the customer's expectations. So you can never be really sure that you've met those expectations. So the only safe course is to engage in overkill, to provide such a high level of service to all of your customers that their expectations are going to be overwhelmed with these great moments of truth, and they're all going to become customer cheerleaders. And here's another point on customer expectations. The expectations of your customer climb after repeated exposure to your company. You see, your customers are a little bit like your kids. They don't really care what you did for them last time. Their question is, what are you going to do for me today? What have you done for me lately? So we need to recognize that our repeat customers and our customer cheerleaders have higher baseline expectations than they did the first time we worked for them. So my point here is that we can flog ourselves silly trying to plot out what level of service to give each customer, or we can give everybody the best. It doesn't take any more effort. This idea of great customer service, if anything, as you get positive feedback from your customers, you're going to wind up invigorated too. Your job will be fun again. So what do you think? Do you have a lot of concepts and ideas floating through your mind right now? Moments of truth, customer eyeglasses, attitudes, emotions, interviews, service circles, everything's whirling through your mind. Well, while I hope you're starting to get the vision, to become excited at the potential these concepts have to revolutionize your job, I'm sure it's all a little intimidating at first. It's time to bring the vision down to earth. And that's what we're going to do in our next message, Your Service System, a Script for Success. You know, we're almost halfway through this course, and I sincerely hope that you're getting on board the service engineering bandwagon. Please, don't sit there and engage in denial and mutter under your breath, this is stupid, crazy, I don't believe any of it. To paraphrase an old expression, try it. You'll like it. What have you got to lose if you're flexible and you have a good attitude toward changing, not how you do the work, but how you deliver the great work that you've always done? You see, so far in this course, I've tried to give you an overview of the principles and the theory behind working in customers' homes. Now, these principles of service engineering, they are tried, they are tested, and they are proven on the home front. They work. But it's necessary for you to understand the reason why you should do something a certain way. because I can't script your every movement, and I certainly can't script the thoughts and the actions of your customers. You're going to be a more efficient, productive, and valuable employee if you have the big picture. I want you to see how the jigsaw puzzle fits together and how you fit into that puzzle. It's time to bring all these theories and principles and ideas together into practical, easy-to-use systems. I want you to remember this word system, because much of the rest of this course is going to be spent introducing you to different systems that you're going to use in the customer's home. Now, the dictionary defines a system as an organized, established procedure. Now, maybe you're thinking, oh, procedures. I know all about those. I've got a whole manual of procedures. I've got boxes of procedures. The last thing I need is more procedures and more systems. Well, I'm going to do something here. I'm going to bet you next week's paycheck that the systems that you're referring to are internal procedures designed for the convenience of your company that help you work faster and more efficiently. And there's nothing wrong with that. Internal procedures are needed in any company. After all, the work needs to get done, and it needs to be done right. And you are going to have to integrate your internal procedures with the systems, the service engineering systems I'm going to share with you now. And as I'm sure you've guessed, these service systems are based on an external viewpoint. These systems look at your job and the work you do through the eyes of your customer. Of course, you still need to do the service that your customer hired your company to do. You still need to paint the house, cut the grass, clean the carpet, install the air conditioner, whatever. But a service system will affect and influence how you deliver these services and/or products. A service system brings all the service engineering concepts that you've learned so far down to earth and puts them in a logical, organized, usable sequence. Think back to two of those concepts, moments of truth and service circles. A moment of truth, you remember, is any time the customer has a contact with your company and forms an opinion from it. And we learned that in a typical job in the customer's home, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of moments of truth. Now remember, most of these moments of truth are subconscious and cumulative. The customer isn't consciously aware of them as they add up in their mind. And then we discussed service circles. And a service circle is the consistent path all of your customers take through your company. Customers encounter the same people, the same procedures, and the same moments of truth as they're handed off from one employee to the next. A service circle just attempts to chart and organize that progress through your company. I call it the customer's yellow brick road, the moments of truth that your customer consistently encounters as your company works in their home. Now, you remember how I illustrated moments of truth on the service circle as precious pendants on a beautiful necklace. Now, a service system is the link that ties those moments of truth to the service circle. A service system organizes moments of truth and puts them in front of the customer all the time, consistently. Now, of course, we don't want to carry all these theories too far. This idea of putting on the customer's eyeglasses, it's really very simple. It's been around a long time. Customers aren't aliens from outer space. They're people, just like you and me. You know, we can go a long way in service engineering if we just use empathy. And empathy is defined as participating in another's feelings or ideas. In other words, putting yourself in the customer's place. You know, a great teacher and a great leader put it very well almost 2,000 years ago when he said, "All things, therefore, that you want men to do to you, you also must likewise do to them." This has become known as the Golden Rule, and millions of people every day try to live their lives by it. And you know what? The Golden Rule will serve you equally well as you use it to make customer cheerleaders on the home front.
I'd like to welcome you back to Winning on the Homefront, your service system, a script for success. What is a service system? Your instructor, Steve Tiburon, explains that a service system is just a script, a mental outline, a framework that consistently delivers positive moments of truth to the homeowner. Service systems let your company deliver a consistent message to customers, and you're going to find out that customers crave consistency above all else. These service systems are built around answering the customer's unspoken questions with unspoken answers. Also, service systems let you give the homeowner the illusion of control. Service systems, unspoken questions and unspoken answers, illusion of control. Sounds interesting, doesn't it? So let's learn more about these unusual terms in Your Service System, a script for success.
Think, please, about an average job that you're doing in the customer's home. Now, wouldn't this job be easier on you, your mind less cluttered, your emotions less worried, if you had a mental outline, a framework, a system to follow that would guide the moments of truth the customer is receiving? You see, you always are going to have moments of truth in front of the customer. And do you remember what a moment of truth is? Anytime the customer has contact with you or your company and they form an opinion. And very likely there are hundreds, maybe even thousands of moments of truth every time you work in the customer's home. Now remember, your only choice with moments of truth, well, you can either just let them happen and hope for the best, or you can control these moments of truth and guarantee that the customer winds up a cheerleader. In other words, what am I talking about here? I'm talking about a service system. And a service system is a script that's built around the emotions of the customer and that guides how you present the great work you've always done. You know, the word script has a bad reputation. And maybe you're worried that if you have to follow a script in the customer's home, you're going to become a robot and you're going to be trapped in this rigid step-by-step routine. Maybe you're thinking, Steve, you don't know me. I'm a free spirit. I just got to be me. I like to go into the customer's home and sort of just let the spirit move me and see what happens. Well, let me answer you by saying, I know how you feel. I'm a pretty creative person myself. After all, I developed these concepts that you've been learning, and I've written thousands of pages about service engineering. I know how to create. And yet, for over 20 years, in the thousands upon thousands of homes that I worked in, I used a service system. I followed the script. You see, scripts don't limit you. They don't make robots out of you. Instead, they free you up mentally. So, instead of walking up to the customer's door with worry and uncertainty and fear in your heart, with a service system to follow, you're going to look forward to meeting and dealing with the homeowner. I'm going to share a secret with you. After interviewing and working with thousands of workers on the home front, I've learned a fascinating point. Almost everyone that works in the customer's home admits that the really tough part of the job isn't actually doing the work. It is dealing with the customer. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the phrase, I'd really like my job if it wasn't for having to talk with the homeowner. But if you have a service-engineered script, a system to follow, you're in control, not only of the technical side of the job, but also the emotional part, because you know the script. Now, I use the term script here very deliberately. We've already determined that every time you enter the customer's home to do a job, you're also performing in a stage play. Well, just what is it that holds a stage play together? You're right, it's the script. And wouldn't you agree that the actors and the actresses on the stage are very creative people? Of course they are. And yet every time the curtain goes up, these gifted individuals perform according to the script. Now, do these actors and actresses feel hemmed in or enslaved by the script? Of course not. They want to have structure and order in their life, and certainly in this stage play, the same way that you do and your customer. And what is it that structures your job in the customer's home? The script. Now, within the structure provided by this script, this service system, actors can be very creative. They can use their initiative and really give life to their lines with their personality. But please, don't change this script on your own. Can you imagine the chaos that would result if, in some stage play on Broadway, the star one day thinks to himself, I think I'm going to change the lines in the middle of the play. Maybe I'll enter stage left instead of stage right. Well, what would happen? You're talking chaos. Everything would collapse. And the same thing happens when we change things out on the home front when they're not authorized by the management of our company. You see, the script, your service system, allows us to balance our creativity with discipline. Or to put it another way, a service system gives you a framework that frees up your mind to be creative and to focus on what's really important, making the customer into a cheerleader. Now, it's no secret that the workers closest to the customers are the ones who know best how to make a cheerleader. Even in a Broadway stage play, the actors are welcome to suggest changes and improvements on the script to their director. And I promise you, the director of your stage play, your boss, is eager to listen to your ideas. But please don't arbitrarily change the script on your own. You don't want to be out there working in the customers' homes, ad-libbing and performing your job in any old manner without the approval of your boss. Now, why is this so important? We've already spent hours in this course analyzing what the customer wants. Freedom from fear, freedom from worry, freedom from apprehension. Well, let me share another thing with you that customers crave. Consistency. Believe it or not, homeowners would much rather have good, solid service every time, consistently, than have a star employee make one visit to their home and then the next time have a total bozo working in there. You see, the key for you and your company to be successful on the home front is to be consistent. Now, as we've already learned, in the customer's home, you are always on stage. Many, many years ago, there's a famous entertainer named Art Linkletter. And Mr. Linkletter had a talk show just with children, if you can imagine that, named Kids Say the Darndest Things. You know what I say? Customers say and think the darndest things. When we're not consistent with what an employee did on the visit before us, our customer assumes we're trying to get away with something. And if we're not consistent, the customer assumes that we're skipping steps in the job, even if the work change makes sense technically. So please remember here, the customer is always watching, especially when they're already scared and suspicious of having you in their home. And customers can take the smallest, the pettiest details and draw the strangest conclusions from them. I think an airline executive in the 1980s named Jan Carlson said it best. He stated, if our customer sees coffee rings on our flip-down seat-back trays, to the customer, it means we don't maintain our jet engines properly. Well, what a great set of customer eyeglasses this guy has. Remember, I've never said that the customer's logical, has witnessed this view that if a flip-down tray has coffee spilled on it, therefore the jet engines out on the wing have been ignored also. All I've ever said is that the view, the emotional world that the customer lives in is very, very real, and we need to put on the customer eyeglasses and see the world through the eyes of the customer. Now, this consistency allows us to manage the details in our business, just like the flip-down trays always getting cleaned in Mr. Carlson's jet airplanes. Now, how are the details managed in your business? It's very simple. With service systems, your script for success. Now, another advantage of service systems is they let us give our very best to the customer even when we don't feel on top of the world. Do you ever have days like that? You're not deathly ill. You can work. You just don't feel great. Well, even if you're not 100% chipper, your customer deserves to feel like he got your very best. But if you have a script, a mental outline to guide your interactions with this customer, you're still going to be able to make a cheerleader out of them, even if you don't feel great. Just like on Broadway, if you're the star of the stage play, even when you don't feel perfect, the show must go on. So let's review this concept of service systems. A service system is a mental outline, a framework that structures not how you do your work, but how you deliver it. A service system is a script that guides the moments of truth your company gives the customer as they proceed along the service circle. Service systems bring all these other service engineering theories down to earth. But you remember, a service system isn't a script that makes you a robot or a slave. Instead, it frees your mind up to concentrate on what you do best, making the cheerleader, instead of fretting over what you should do or what you should say to the customer. You see, with service systems, you're in control. But just like a script on Broadway, even though you're the star of the play in the customer's home, you still can't make changes in the script without getting the approval of the director or your boss. Remember that service circles bring consistency to the experience of the homeowner, and trust me, homeowners love consistency above all other things. And finally, in our review, if you have a service system, a script firmly in mind as you walk up to the customer's front door, even if you don't feel 100% perfect, you're still going to make a cheerleader. Even if you're not having a great day, your customer deserves to have a great day. And if you're delivering your work guided by a service-engineered system, when you leave this job, your customer is going to feel on top of the world even if you aren't, and they will be an enthusiastic cheerleader. So are you sold now on delivering your work, the already great technical work you've always done, guided by a service system? I really hope so, because the next logical question would be, how do we build a service system? Well, I thought you'd never ask. Listen carefully here. We build service systems by answering the unspoken questions of the customer. Now, let me ask you, as you walk into the customer's home, does she ask you questions? Sure, she does. But what sort of questions are they? Well, let me guess. They're probably questions like this. How much is this job going to cost? Or how long will it take? Now, see, I'm sure that you hear these verbal questions all the time. But now, do you think that the customer, at the same time they're asking you these verbal questions, also has unspoken, nonverbal, silent questions in her mind at the same time? Absolutely. For example, how often are you verbally asked, "Are you going to do a good job?" Not very often. But do you think every customer you meet for the first time is silently asking this question? I guarantee it. Or how often are you met at the front door with this question, "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" Well, my guess is no one has ever verbally asked you this question. But trust me, every single customer you work for is silently thinking, does this person know what they're doing? Can I trust this person? Now, anytime we're asked a question, what do? Well, we answer it. Now, how can you answer these silent, unspoken questions in the mind of your customer? Now, you could march up to the front door, introduce yourself, and then in a loud voice proclaim, "Mrs. Jones, let me assure you I'm going to do a good job. I know what I'm doing, and yes, you can trust me. Now that I've answered all your unspoken questions, get out of the way and let me get to work." Well, you've given some verbal answers to these unspoken mental questions of Mrs. Jones, but you've also created a flabbergasted customer that thinks you are completely crazy, an absolute nutcase. There's got to be a better way to answer the unspoken questions of your customer. Well, here it is. Pay attention. We answer the unspoken questions of our customers by providing unspoken answers. And we give these unspoken answers to our customer guided by service systems that consistently provide moments of truth. That was a real mouthful. Let me try again. Service systems create moments of truth, and these positive moments of truth give beautiful, unspoken answers to the unspoken questions that your customer has pounding away in her mind. So to answer my original question, how do we build service systems? We structure these service systems by, first of all, analyzing what silent, unspoken questions our customers are likely to have, and then we build our script around giving the customer one positive moment of truth after another that will answer their unspoken questions. Now remember, please, that your customer has these negative, fearful, unspoken questions shouting out in her mind whether you choose to admit it or not. But a service system is proactive. You're recognizing that these unspoken questions exist, and you're answering them in a tactful, consistent, silent manner. And how do you do this? With a service system, a script built around calming the hidden fears of your customer. Now, service systems allow you to be in control of the Homefront stage play. Now, maybe you're thinking, wait a minute, Steve, I can't be in control. For hours now, you've been preaching that I need to put the customer first. I thought that the customer is king, that they need to be in control. We can't both be in charge of the job, can we? Well, that's a good question. You see, you're right. We've already examined the negative emotions that your customer experiences when she has strangers working in her home. Fear, apprehension, vulnerability, maybe even hostility. And why is this? Because homeowners feel vulnerable and trapped in their homes because they feel out of control. And you're absolutely correct. Your customer must feel in control. But if we look deeper, customers don't really want to be in charge of the job. They just want to feel in charge. You see, our service systems need to provide the homeowner the illusion of control. And this is a really important concept in service engineering, giving your customers the illusion of control. Let me illustrate this. Sadly, one day you are suddenly struck with agonizing chest pains, and your family calls 911, and as you're being rushed to the hospital, you're scared to death. You lay in the emergency room and you're waiting for the doctor with fear and apprehension. How do you feel? Well, my guess is you feel trapped, vulnerable, and very, very out of control. Why, that sounds just like the emotions of the homeowners we've been talking about that have strangers working in their home. But now, let's look at 3 different ways a doctor could deal with you as you lay on that cold emergency room operating table and see how the issue of control comes into it in all 3 different scenarios. First of all, the first doctor might enter your room and grunt out a greeting, not even look you in the eye. He's going to tear open your shirt without even asking you. Listen quickly to your heart with the ice-cold stethoscope that he's been keeping in the freezer. Then he'll grunt again, and he'll turn to leave. Now remember, you're scared to death, so you blurt out, "What do you think, Doc? What are my chances?" Now, without even slowing down, he says back, "Not good. I'm going to have to cut you open right away." How do you feel? Not too good, right? You see, this doctor may be highly skilled. He might be an expert in his field, and yet you have no confidence in him at all. And why is that? Because he refused to deal with you emotionally. He gave you no control at all over your case, over your health, over your body. And what do you find yourself saying? You say, "I don't trust this guy. Find me another doctor." So, The hospital runs around and they page doctors, and another one in our second illustration comes creeping into your room. You're still laying there. You're still gripped with fear. You're still feeling very much out of control. And in walks this second doctor very, very tentatively. Now, this doctor is dressed casually, not like a real doctor, but at least he introduces himself, which is better than the other guy. And then he asks you, which is good, if he can examine you. He shakes his head and mutters a lot. And then, just like the first doctor, he turns to leave without cluing you in at all on your condition. And again, you desperately cry out, "So what do you think, doctor?" Well, turning back to you, he avoids your eyes and he kind of stammers, "Well, I don't really know what to think. What do you think? What do you think I should do?" How do you feel about this doctor, the one that you're supposed to entrust your life to? You're even more scared of him than you were the first guy. You see, this doctor gave you too much control of your case. You're not a heart surgeon. Deep down inside, you want a doctor to be in charge, to be in control, but to make you feel like you have control of the important decisions. So you're not going to be happy with this second guy either, are you? So the hospital pages a third doctor. He first knocks on the door of the examining room, and then, after you invite him, he enters. And he's dressed in a crisp white medical coat. He looks you in the eye, smiles at you, introduces himself, and then asks a wonderful question that neither of the first two doctors even bothered with. "How are you feeling today?" Oh, guess what? The dam bursts. You tell him everything, all of your fears, your worries, your condition. He listens and listens, and he listens carefully. He nods his head, and he occasionally makes notes on his clipboard. And you start feeling better and better about this guy. And then he patiently interviews you and asks if he may examine you. He makes more notes, looks at your x-rays, and then he sits down and describes what he has discovered from your examination, and he patiently explains the technical terms. Now, this kind, concerned professional then calmly lays out your treatment options, along with the benefits and the problems of each one, and then he sits back and he says, "Do you have any questions?" Well, your chest still hurts, but by now you feel great. You're reassured, you're confident in this doctor's abilities, even though you don't even know for sure if he graduated from medical school. Well, why is this that you have confidence all of a sudden? Because this doctor has been treating you emotionally before he starts caring for your physical ailment. Or to borrow a phrase that we used earlier in this course, he's fixing the customer first, and then he'll fix your problem. So how do you respond when this doctor asks, "Do you have any questions?" My guess is your very first question will be, "Which treatment option do you recommend, doctor?" Now, do you see what's happened? This wise doctor gave you control of your case, and then you gave it back to him. You see, this doctor gave you the illusion of control, and that's fine with you. Now, what this doctor followed with you, whether he knew it or not, was a service system. He followed a script, a mental outline that he no doubt uses with all of his new patients. Is it your body? Of course it is. Do you want to feel in control of the decision-making process? Absolutely. But you hired this doctor to be an expert, a consultant, to lay out your options and advise you which way you should go. Now, during this scenario that I just described in the emergency room, did you feel pushed around or intimidated or manipulated by this nice doctor? Of course not. You appreciated his compassion, his sensitivity, his advice, and the guidance that he gave you as he worked with a service system, which is just a script built around your feelings. Now, I'm sure by now you see the similarities between this situation in the emergency room and on the home front, where you work every day. In both cases, the customer is unfamiliar with what's going on. In both cases, the customer is scared to death, worried, and feels very, very out of control. Now, whether it's a doctor working in the emergency room or you working in the customer's home, both of you need to give the customer the illusion of control while you tactfully guide the job along. Now, you see, your service system is a script that lets you consistently deliver all these positive moments of truth to the homeowner. And a service system should be designed to let the customer feel just as much in control as they want to be. And yet you're going to be guiding the process and the outcome. If you work for a company that has a good reputation, that already has lots of customer cheerleaders, even before you meet the customer, they're going to assume that you're an expert in your field. You see, the homeowner wants to lean on you as a consultant, a valued source of impartial advice. If you function as a consultant, it will be a wonderful way for you to give the customer positive moments of truth. A service system allows you to keep this respect and build on it instead of appearing helpless and floundering when you deal with the customer. Now, in our next 3 messages, we're going to give you a step-by-step service system to working in the customer's home. I've structured this service system as a script to a play with 3 acts in it. The following message will consider Act 1, the first 2 minutes. You'll learn that we can make or break the entire job and our customer's perception of value with how we perform in the first 2 minutes we spend with them. Now, you've heard the phrase before, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. And this is so true on the home front. Please, don't use these service engineering concepts to wing it, to flim-flam or con your customer. Instead, please follow a different saying. Knowledge is power. Gain all the knowledge that you can. Be well balanced. Don't just use service engineering, but become an expert technically also. Your technical work should dance in perfect 2-part harmony with these Homefront service concepts that you're learning in this course. The service systems I'm going to now share with you will provide a structure, a framework, to let you deliver your technical expertise to the customer. Now, maybe for the first time, you will have a mental outline that will answer those negative, fearful, unspoken questions of the homeowner with positive, professional, unspoken answers. Then, you'll be using a service system as a script for success.